Scrambled Brains by Ink in My Heart and on the Page. Reddy turned to the kid who had frozen. "What's your name, kid?" He knew immediately that he had said something he shouldn't. His heart had plummeted in his chest as the kid's face fell, a look of horror dawning his features. He took a physical step back as if he had been slapped, and a small whimper fell from his mouth. Or Reddy takes a hit during a training exercise and forgets who Peter is. This one shot is of 1,520 words. So, yeah, I guess that's all there. Scrambled Brains. Were four little rabbits, and their names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. Reddy rolled his head to the side, sliding across the soft pillow. He cricked open an eye to find his best friend sitting beside his bed, book in hand and a shit-eating grin on his face. His usual kept beard wasn't as clean as it usually was, and there were dark circles under his eyes. Reddy was attempted to be hidden behind that grin. That made Reddy's stomach ache. He hated worrying his best friend. "Peter Rabbit, really?" Reddy croaked out. "Your favorite." Tony grinned wickedly. Reddy groaned, rolling his head back, and blinked open his eyes. He was met with a semi-familiar ceiling, and the scent of what can only be associated with a hospital. It's not the first time he's woken up with Tony reading him children's stories, but he was hoping that it would never happen again. "I blame you," Reddy said, with a groan. Beside him, Tony scoffed. "Do you even know what you're blaming me for?" "I'm in a hospital, so of course whatever happened, it was your fault," Reddy grumbled. He was uncomfortable and his head throbbed, but a quick check of his body told him he was going to live. But he would be sore for a while. "Rude," Tony pointed out. "And you can blame the Air Force for this one. I wasn't even near you when their training exercise took a nosedive, and you with a bump on the back of your head." That explained the throbbing pain at the base of his skull, and Reddy knew it was more than a little bump. But Tony was alluring it too. But he would get the details later. He didn't remember the training session, and everything is feeling a little hazy around the edges when he tried to recall the details. "How long will you be gracing me with your company?" Reddy asked, shifting to sit up a little. Tony closed the book, helping Reddy adjust the pillow behind his shoulders, so he was more comfortable. "Just a day or two before you are released. Besides, I brought reinforcements." Reddy arched a brow at Tony, giving him a wary look. "Reinforcements? More like they brought themselves," Tony corrected. "Couldn't keep them away if I tried." Before Reddy could ask who Tony was talking about, the door to his room was opening, and a small figure slipped inside. He could only stare as a kid, and Reddy thought he looked no older than 12, made his way to Tony, arms full of snacks from the vending machine. He was dressed in jeans and a hoodie. His brown curls were a mess, and his dark pale skin made the dark circles under his eyes more prominent. He looked like a miniature version of Tony, and Ruddy's heart skipped a beat in his chest. They didn't have Mr. Ruddy's favorite, the kid was saying, eyes on Tony, but I did manage to find a vending machine that had his second favorite. Good job, kid, Tony said, his expression just as fond as his tone was. Just in time, too. Sleeping Beauty has woken. The kid looked around to Ruddy, his arms full of snacks, tumbling from his arms to the bed. His eyes widened, and he bounced on his toes. Mr. Ruddy, you're awake. How are you? Do you feel okay? Has the nurse seen you yet? What did they say? When do you get to come back to the tower? Ruddy blinked at the rapid-fire questions. He turned to face Tony and narrowed his eyes. Just because I'm in a hospital does not mean I want to yell at you for keeping the fact that you have a kid, a secret from me. This time it was Tony's turn to blink. What? Ruddy turned back to the kid who had frozen. What's your name, kid? He knew immediately that he had done something he shouldn't. His heart plummeted in his chest. As the kid's face fell, a look of horror dawning his features. He took a physical step back, as if he had been slapped, and a small whimper fell from his mouth. Tony, shut up. Tony shut up straight, his gaze going sharp. He snagged the kid by the wrist, taking him close. He stood wrapping his arms around the kid's shoulders, tucking him into his side. You don't recognize him? Tony asked, voice hard. Ruddy looked over the kid, waiting for some sort of familiarity to kick in, but there was nothing. He looked back at Tony, giving him a small grimace. No, I'm sorry. This is Peter, Tony said, watching Ruddy carefully. Peter chewed his bottom lip between his teeth, sinking further into Tony's side. I'm sorry, I don't recognize you, Peter, Ruddy said. He felt like the world's biggest jackass when the kid's eyes welled with tears. Okay, you hit your head, Peter mumbled, ducking his head. Tony smoothed a hand up and down Peter's arm. Leaning in close, he whispered something into Peter's ears, the kid giving a small nod. Tony pressed a quick kiss to the kid's temples. And wasn't that a sight to see? And looked back at Ruddy. What's the last thing you remember? Ruddy made his thoughts derail from the fact that that Tony had a kid, and tried to focus on what was the last thing he remembered. I remember falling. He gave Tony a significant look at an airport. Tony winced. Yeah, okay, it's been a few more months than that shit show. Looks like your brain got a little bit of a scramble, honey bear. Months? Ruddy frowned. He glanced at Peter. When did you find out he was yours? Peter's cheeks flushed red, and he tried to wiggle out of Tony's grip. Only the genius held tight. Brain scrambled, and you're still teasing me about this, Tony huffed, rolling his eyes. Peter's not mine, biologically. But he is my kid. Peter made an odd, choking, wheezing noise, cheeks getting steadily redder by the second. Aw, look, he's embarrassed, Tony grinned, hugging Peter tighter against him. I'm really nailing this dad thing, aren't I? Oh my god, Peter groaned, chin dropping to his chest. You're the worst. Tony barked a laugh. That's not what you were saying the first time we met. I regret ever going on that field trip. Peter whimpered. The spider should have just killed me. Tough luck, Tony snarked, with a grin. But think about it. Now you get to meet Rudy all over again. Maybe give him a better first impression than the last one you did. Peter gave a squawk, shooting Tony a betrayed look. You said we would never talk about that again. Rudy and I talked about it all the time. Rudy grinned at the whimper Peter gave. He was amazed at the sight before him. People who had always said that Tony wouldn't make a good role model for anyone. Sure, Tony had been a little misguided in the past, but Rudy knew how good Tony was, how far he had come. But seeing Tony with Peter, it made something in Rudy's chest settle. Seeing his best friend look so happy, it was a good look on him. And Rudy was dying to know just how Peter had come into his best friend's life. It should remind me of that again, Rudy said with a grin. Maybe it will jog my memory. Peter shot Rudy his own betrayed look. Come on! Well, Honey Bear, it all started out with Peter bleeding out on my kitchen table. Tony grinned. Rudy's jaw dropped open. You were what? I was fine, Peter grumbled. You were not, Tony sniffed, and Rudy could tell it was a sore spot for Tony. And while I'm trying to stop the bleeding, you walk in. Tony waved a hand at Rudy. And Peter here tries to go and shake your hand verbally, spewing all your fancy titles. I did not, Peter lied very badly. That's Mr. Rudy. That's not what happened. He's lying. Rudy grinned. I don't know Pete. I know when Tony's lying. Miss Potts would never betray me like this, Peter grumbled, finally tugging himself out of Tony's grip and flopping down on the end of Rudy's bed. He picked up a chocolate bar, unwrapped it, and shoved it into his mouth. You guys suck. Well, Rudy couldn't have that. If he was an uncle, he was going to be the best one. Well, have I told you how Tony and I first met? No. Peter perked up. Don't you dare, Tony growled, shooting a glare at Rudy. Oh no, my brains are scrambled, Rudy said, deadpan. I can't help what comes out of my mouth. Honey Bear, Tony warned. Rudy beamed as Peter leaned forward eagerly. While he couldn't remember who Peter was, he was looking forward to meeting the kid all over again. It was nice to see his best friend, his brother, so happy and reckoned that it was all thanks to Peter. Anyways, that was the end of the chapter of Scrambled Brains. Hope you all enjoy that. And yes, I did have some mistakes there, so forgive me for that. But it did better than the first time I read it. So yeah. Anyways, I guess have a good night wherever you are, or morning, or whatever time you end up seeing this, I guess. Bye.